The years of COVID, as you may recall, hit businesses so hard. And now, what happened was you found businesses that had the intention to actually meet tax obligations, but the circumstances were so hard that even where there was a will, there was no capacity. I mean, someone would like to pay, but really there is no capacity for them to meet those obligations. And even within the mid of COVID, government offered some remissions and cautions for businesses to not to be really hit by these tax obligations within the time of COVID.
That is 2020.
Yes, we saw extensions of return filing. We saw extensions of due dates for people to file and pay their taxes. We saw removal of certain interest and so on and so forth. But even within that mix, because there was restriction to mobility, some people wouldn't move from wherever they were to get to places where they would meet these tax obligations, even where there was something so good for them to benefit from. And so come financial year 2023-2024, when the government is bringing in tax amendments, it proposes that if we have anyone who has had penalties and interest that accumulated up to 30th June 2023, stretching backward, June 30th, 2023, then
to 2020?
No, stretching all the way back, even pre-COVID.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Cut them some slack. You get it? Cut them some slack. They've been through
a hard time.
Yes. Give them a new lease of life. And so that is where this wave of penalty and interest comes in. But then you ask the question, how do these penalties and interest anyway come about?
Yes.
Because the reasons that could have caused this person to accumulate this penalty and interest during COVID still subsist for the periods before. There could be the same reasons why one accumulates or accumulated that penalty and interest. One, if you do not register for taxes. I mean, ideally, you ought to register. If you do not register, if you misinform the URA, you earned 1 million and you're telling URA, I only earned 200,000. If that is under declaration or misdeclaration, or the other scenarios were not to file a return with the Uganda Revenue Authority, not to pay the tax, many other things, dealing in any schemes that lead to loss of revenue, you get it? Tax evasion schemes of any kind, all these will take you into an area or a space where you're due for a penalty or interest. These will come in any way possible if the URA finds you culpable for any of those misdemeanors or any of those offenses. And so these are the reasons, failure to keep records, among many other things. So these are the reasons why someone may find themselves with interest and penalty. And government is saying, we know you're our taxpayer for the long haul. You're not going to only pay tax now. And it benefits no one to heap a heavy burden on you that one may even be sure you may not be able to meet, even with any time that may be given to you. Let's give you a new chapter. Let's start on a fresh page. Let's close our eyes on the penalties and interest. Hopefully, we know you will be able to pay the principal tax that you should have paid anyway, and then we can start afresh going forward.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And this is under Section 47A of the Tax Procedures Code Act.
Yes.
What does it say?
Within this provision, as it was brought in, Parliament guided through that legislation that anyone who will have accumulated penalty and interest by 30th June 2023 for any form of domestic tax, and in this case we mean value-added tax,
Okay.
local excise duty,
All right.
local excise duty, income tax, and in this case we are talking about all forms of personal income tax, pay as you earn, rental income tax, business or corporate income tax, and any form of income tax as well, withholdings, withholding taxes, all forms of domestic taxes that we may look at, gaming, and so on and so forth. And so when we look at the Tax Procedures Code, its premises are largely around domestic taxes and nothing to talk about customs.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing about customs, import duties, and so on. No, these are not covered by the waiver, and we need to be explicitly clear about that from the onset. And so anyone who has had unpaid or outstanding tax within this period of 30th June 2023, stretching backwards, and it has accumulated penalty and interest.
And interest.
Yes. As long as Idris, allow me to use you.
Yes, of
okay.
course.
Now, as long as Idris
Yeah.
comes through to pay this principal tax, which they ought have paid before to June 30th, 2023, then we will not look at the penalty and interest that they ought have paid. Let's just paint a scenario. You should have paid 1 million shillings to government by 30th June 2023 as value-added tax. But Idris, you did not. And because of that, you accumulated a penalty of 300,000. Now that becomes 1.3 million.
Okay.
And possibly, because of that 1.3 million, it has also accumulated interest of 200,000. Now this becomes 1.5 million shillings. I hope you're with me, Idris.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now,
I'm in class.
Okay, I'm very, very glad, and I hope our viewers are.
They are
Now,
indeed.
government is saying, ideally you should have paid 1 million shillings, but because you did not do so, you've gotten penalty of 300,000 and interest of 200,000, making it 1.5. Idris, just make sure that before 31st December 2024, you pay just the 1 million. And the government will close its eyes on the 500,000, which is the penalty and interest that you ought have paid or as required by the law. And so that is how it works. But then, given that one may not have the whole 1 million
Lump
shillings
sum,
and
yes.
lump sum at once, there is the possibility that you can choose to eat it in small chunks.
Okay.
And so you say, maybe this November, I pay the 500,000. I mean, the half of the 1 million. I pay it in two halves. So you pay half of the 1 million. And the moment you pay this half, automatically half of your penalty and interest is also knocked off.
Oh, that's
You
exciting.
get it?
Yes.
So the proportionate, there is a proportionate knockoff of the principal tax that you pay against the penalty and interest. So when you are demanding, I mean, if you are demanded of 1 million shillings and instead you pay 500,000, which is half,
Yes.
automatically your penalty, the other side will also be reduced by half. Penalty and interest will be reduced by half.
Okay. Then it's carried over for the next financial year?
Okay, let's just pray and hope that by December you finish the entire amount.
Okay.
And then all the penalty and interest will be knocked off. But let's just, if it doesn't work out like you said and you only clear half, then it means in the next year you will still have the 500,000, which was the remaining bit of the principal tax, not yet paid, and the 250,000, which was the remaining part of the penalty and interest, which you did not clear. And so you were only able to clear half of the obligations under the benefit of the law that was provided by Parliament, and we may go with that. But I'll tell you this, Idris, I'll tell you this.
Yes.
At the time, because this existed the year before.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes, we had it
2023.
23. We had it 2023. Many Ugandans did not benefit from this. They came into 2024. And around the time, around January 2024, many Ugandans realized there was a benefit they didn't take advantage of. So they made an effort to get this known to the Parliament and to the URA and the Ministry of Finance. And the law was proposed and it was brought back. But then there are those who thought they had been caught off, and so they went ahead to pay. We had over 100,000 people who had gone ahead to pay their principal tax. Over. And when this law was brought back, we had to, and they had already paid their penalty and interest.
Yeah.
URA had to credit them back.
Oh.
You get it?
Okay.
Yes. URA had to credit them back. And so let's imagine these guys, by January, they thought they did not have this benefit of the law, and they had gone ahead to pay the 1.5 million shillings as tax. What happened is, the moment URA implemented the law in its systems, the e-tax system, they automatically got their tax credit of 500,000. You get it, Idris?
Yes, I do.
So this benefit has been taken on by many Ugandans, and for this group that I'm talking about, it was automatically made for them. And for those who have not yet taken advantage of it, you may consult some of your peers in business who are benefiting quietly.
Indeed.
Yes.
Since we are being educated, because you are the acting manager, tax education, so this is a class.
Indeed.
You keep mentioning the word June.
Yes.
June. And for a new taxpayer out there who's watching, why are you mentioning June and not December? Because ordinarily, we would think the year starts from January to December.
Yes.
But you keep mentioning June. Why June?
Okay. Indeed, we have a government year of income, which in the tax lingo and the public service and all accounting years in Uganda, we take it that the government financial year starts in July and ends in June in the next calendar year, so to say. So the current financial year that we are operating as government of Uganda, as Ugandans, is a year that started July 2024, and it will end in June 2025. Okay. In tax lingo, this is what we call the normal year of income. Now, there are people, and that's the reason why we are talking about June 30th, 2023 for the beneficiaries, and maybe June 30th, 2025, so to say, in the current year that we are operating. Now, we speak in that tone because it is the rhythm that majority of our operators, business operators, and even when we register you by default at the Uganda Revenue Authority, that's the year that you'll be rolled on. Now, we have people, this being the normal year, now we have people who choose and opt for particular reasons to operate the calendar year, which is January to December. We call that the substituted year of income. It is substituted. While you may be used to January to December, other people in certain jurisdictions run a year that ends March, run a year that ends September, and so on and so forth. But any year which is not the normal year is what we call a substituted year of income. And there is also a transitional one, but maybe we can dive into that at another opportunity.
Indeed.
Yes.
Now, the waivers.
Yes.
Are for the interest and penalties for the last financial year.
Yes.
And you talked about going farther. If I have not been paying taxes for the last 10 years, and I have incurred penalties and interests, and I pay all the outstanding principal tax by December, am I still under the waiver?
Indeed, indeed. The opportunity that this waiver brings is to give anyone who has had tax obligations that were seemingly impossible an opportunity to start a new chapter. Because, Idris, I have interacted in many of the community outreaches where I happen to engage with the publics. Many people who would want to come through on the tax obligations, but they are worried.
Indeed.
About
a lot of Ugandans are worried about tax.
Yes, they are worried about how far back URA may be intent on going to make them pay tax for those previous periods.
Yeah.
And so when government provides the offer that if I'm to go back, you'll only have to pay the principal tax, I will not look at the penalty and interest, then it is a bit of a breather for someone to consider coming onto the register, such that we grow the current very low numbers to the potential 10 million taxpayers that we think Ugandans should be at right now. And so my encouragement would be for anyone who is out there watching us, to visit the URA website, ura.go.ug. Just go and log in with your TIN and password. Click on reports and check out your tax statement to see how much you should have paid by 30th June 2023. Clear it. When you register payment going by that procedure, it will automatically show you only the tax that you should pay. It will not bring you this penalty and interest.
Oh, okay.
Just clear that. And when we come blowing fireworks 31st December, you'll be among the happy people, really happy. And
are there particular waivers, or are there particular penalties and probably interests that are not covered under this waiver?
Indeed, yes.
Which are those?
Yes. Like I was saying, no, these are not really waivers, penalties, so to say, but anything related to customs in the first place is not here. Anything related to customs is regulated by the East African Community Customs Management Act, and the tax procedures code is largely harmonizing the implementation of domestic taxes, and that's where the waiver is enshrined. Now, that is one. Two, you will find penalties that may not have arisen out of you not paying tax. Like you did not register, blatantly, you just did not register. And now that is not covered under this waiver. There are penalties that may relate to non-compliance with digital tracking solution requirements, the DTS, digital tax stamps. I mean, someone has intentionally not maybe affixed stamps or tampered with these stamps. Now, this is not out of you having had a heavy penalty, a heavy tax to pay, but it was out of, so to say, sheer intent to not just do what was expected of you. Okay? You just didn't affix these stamps, you just did not register, and that is what it is. And so those penalties, or those, maybe let's look at another scenario. Fines imposed by court. They could have been imposed by court. That will not be covered under this, the environs of this waiver. And so circumstances like those are not really covered. But anything that could have arisen as penalty and interest, and it is out of a principal tax that is huge for you to cover, is duly covered under this waiver.
Well,
yes.
Mr. Micheal Masembe, our teacher today, thank you so much for this educational session. Maybe if you have one last thing that you want to tell the taxpayers out there.
Indeed, it is, we are in the late dates of November.
Indeed.
It's vaguely 1.5 months to the end of the year, the calendar year, and tax returns are due. End of year tax returns are due for income tax, returns provisional for income tax. Let us file them, let us pay the due taxes, and by the time we are popping the fireworks, we will be celebrating a new year with all the requirements for the old year done.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much for coming, for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you who has been watching. And if you want to keep up with this conversation, go to our social media platforms. That is on X, Twitter, and YouTube. Look out for NTV Uganda. Use the hashtag morning@NTV and ask questions about tax paying, because you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of the law. Well, some more is coming up on the show. Do not go away. Good morning.